Hello, everyone. My name is Ezra, otherwise known as E-Soup, and it is weird streaming on a Friday, streaming on a different day from the usual again. Um, and I am so excited to get back into Case File Volume 3. Um, I keep thinking about how beautiful the cover is. I don't know, I'm just particularly obsessed with the cover of this one. I forget if I mentioned it last time, but I had looked more at it when I was making the thumbnail and realized that they're in water. So I'm like, what the heck are we getting into now? What waters are we wading into? Excuse the pun. Um, hello, Henry. You made it home just in time. That's awesome. Um, but yeah, so today we're reading chapters 63 to 64. Um, Thank you, Nina, for doing the page math. I think I tweaked it a little bit. Yeah, I think I tweaked it a little bit to get through the volume a little bit faster, but it was really helpful having you do the page math. I don't know if you're here right now, but yeah, it was really helpful because I didn't have to do the usual thing and try and fail not to look at chapter titles and like get myself spoiled in the process of doing it. But yeah, apparently these chapters are a little bit on the longer side today. Um, please have a gander at the trigger warnings linked in the description if you haven't already done that, or you're new here, or whatever reason. And please give the stream a like. And, oh, Henry, the wall keeps getting prettier. Thank you. The big blue poster, yeah, it's Yuwu. The only other, I'm trying to think. The only other like 7Cs like special edition posters I have, there were two posters that came with Guardian. And recently I was on the fence about getting Guardian physical copies, and recently I got Guardian. There was like a really good deal online. And I was like, "What? There's two posters in the special edition?" But they didn't fit over there, so they're on a different wall. Hi Wolf. Thank you for coming to say hi. Um And if I had my way, I have like random stuff in one of those little hanging organizers on my door. But if I had somewhere else to put that stuff, I would absolutely have like posters decked out on my door as well. I would just have them like, I would just have like stuff all over the place. Um, Henry, I was able to get a special edition of Guardian because it was available on Amazon. I don't know in other countries if they're still available, but you could possibly look into it because I was really surprised to see that it still existed anywhere. Um, so, uh, you said raining, hailing, spring breeze, summer. Wolf, right now it's not raining. It was very rainy yesterday. Um, but yeah, how's the weather where you are? I was, Henry, the more I think about Guardian, the more I'm like, oh yeah, I was really into that. Even though I thought it got a bit convoluted, I like it enough that it sort of like diminishes the like critiques that I have of it, if that makes sense. So finally I was like, heck, I want Guardian. Um, oh, Wolf, that's good to know. Some international sellers still have the special edition. Oh, Henry, it's so cold and windy there. Yeah, today was, well, it's the end of February and I am in the South, so I was gonna say today was kind of unseasonably warm, but I don't even think that's true. Um, there's like there's a cherry blossom tree in front of my apartment complex, and I think it was last year it bloomed like really early. It was still February, and it was like beautiful and pink and blooming, and it hasn't yet, but I'm expecting it to happen soon. Um So, yeah. So where the heck did we leave off? He Yu had gone to the movie screening, The Many Faces of Malady, and he's like sitting behind Xie Jing-chung, and Xie Jing-chung is there with Chen Man. So I'm excited for the disaster that is about to happen. So I'm gonna get into it. We are on page 59 for chapter 63. No, he's not great. The campus premiere of The Many Faces of Malady was scheduled on a Friday. The police officer must have deliberately asked for a day off to accompany Xie Jing-chung. In the dimly lit theater, He Yu stared at the two people in front of him with a blank expression. He was wearing a baseball cap and a black face mask, a combination that wasn't all that unusual at Huzhou University. In fact, it was a standard getup for the many celebrities who debuted as child stars at this fine arts school, and for handsome guys who disliked showing their faces. Because of this, Xie Jing-chung didn't notice the boy behind him as he moved to his seat. "Chen Man, your popcorn." "Thank you." He Yu crossed his arms, leaned back against his cushioned seat, and raised an eyebrow. "Chen Man. So, the name of this cop, this pig, was Chen Man." He Yu suddenly remembered picking up that phone call for Xie Jing-chung at Xie Xue's apartment. At the time, the caller ID displayed on the phone. He was pretty sure it had been the same name. Yes, that was the name. He Yu's icy expression cooled by several more degrees, until the almond eyes beneath the brim of his cap practically frosted over. Oh, bye, Wolf. The way that he's so jealous about this right now, and he is absolutely in denial. He continued to silently observe the two people in front of him. He knew that Chen Man was somewhat close with Xie Jing-chung, but still, this degree of familiarity made him very uncomfortable. The Many Faces of Malady was a collaborative film produced by Huzhou Medical School and Huzhou University to celebrate the anniversary of their founding. It was only being shown on campus, so the audience was composed solely of students from the two universities. What did it have to do with a pig who'd graduated from a police academy? Had Chen Man even contributed anything to the production? Was he the action director for the film, or had he provided police support on set? No, he'd done none of these things. So what had he come here for? I don't know. To see a movie with his friend? I think it's perfectly normal to invite people from outside your school to things like this. He Yu's mental state was quite twisted right now. On one hand, he refused to admit on pain of death that he was homosexual. Ooh, I like the wording of that because, I mean, we obviously know it, and Meatbun doesn't have to tell us. But there's like he refused to admit that he was homosexual. Like, where the narrative is actually saying, well, he was homosexual, he's just not admitting it yet. He still thought that his desire for Xie Jing-chung was nothing more than a normal physiological urge. That what he missed was the wild sexual entanglement, not Xie Jing-chung himself. But on the other hand, because of his masculine sense of possessiveness, he refused to allow others to touch something when he'd already taken a bite out of it. Even if he didn't want it anymore, no one else was worthy of touching it. And so he observed Chen Man with ice in his eyes, like a wolf staring at a hyena that coveted its prey. Chen Man felt the back of his neck prickling, and instinctively raised a hand to touch there before turning to glance behind him. "What's wrong?" asked Xie Jing-chung. "It's nothing. I suddenly got goosebumps. Maybe the air conditioning is too strong," Chen Man said, sitting down next to Xie Jing-chung. The film itself started soon after. The Many Faces of Malady was made up of a series of several shorts that could stand alone as independent stories. But there was a hidden thread linking the characters and events of each individual narrative together at the end. Kind of sounds like the way Meat Bun will write inside stories and you think they're like a one-time thing, and then all of the pieces come together in a more important way as the story goes along. I don't know if that was like on purpose or not, but it certainly feels like that's what she does. It was 2 hours long, and all of Hoyu's classmates were engrossed by it. Since the actors were all students from their own school, they inevitably ended up heckling each other during certain exciting scenes, and it was far noisier than an ordinary movie theater. Meanwhile, Hoyu barely watched the movie at all. All he did was sit in the back and stare at Xie Qingcheng. He had gone out of his way to pick a seat that wasn't directly behind Xie Qingcheng, but slightly to the side, so he could clearly see his face. The flickering illumination of the screen veiled that sharply defined face in a layer of gauze. The light changed unpredictably, making Xie Qingcheng's features seem like treasure submerged in water, his taut skin emanating a soft glow. He Yu's throat bobbed slightly as he swallowed. He's not attractive at all, he thought. Gazing at an apathetic man at such close quarters was as painful as self-flagellation. But his stare never faltered as he thoroughly flogged himself. It was only when Xie Qingcheng frowned slightly at the screen that He Yu realized that the film had reached his own part. He didn't have many scenes, and his screen time was even shorter after editing. Okay, so I think we're getting clarification here that, like, because I couldn't remember if they got a chance to actually film him with Xie Qingcheng, but it looks like they did not film him with Xie Qingcheng, and that was just for rehearsal purposes. Unfortunately, because honestly, I was really hoping for a world in which they kiss in the actual film. On the screen, the gay couple played by He Yu and his Xuezhang were talking. How much do you love me? How much will you give up for me? This was the scene that Xie Qingcheng had once helped him rehearse. A scene that involved a kiss. Looking back on it now, both Xie Qingcheng and He Yu felt a bit strange. At the time, they'd been disgusted by just a kiss. But what about now, when the movie was released? The permissible and the forbidden. They'd already done it all. Henry, the homo of cinema is the cinema is there inside your mind. Oh my god. I'm gonna get it stuck in my head, but just like that. He Yu watched as Xie Qingcheng lowered his lashes and looked away, as if the He Yu in the film reminded him of some uncomfortable memories. After a while, he straight up closed his eyes. It seemed that life had been rather hard on Xie Qingcheng as of late. His cheeks were slightly sunken, and there was some faint gray stubble on his chin, the consequence of less than meticulous shaving. After he'd had his eyes closed for a while, his head began tipping slightly forward. He'd actually fallen asleep. Watching from behind, He Yu grew irritated at the sight. How could he fall asleep with all this racket? I have fallen asleep in a movie theater before, and I was admittedly very tired. It's not entirely the movie's fault. But, like, it's weird because I thought afterwards, I was like, how did I do that? The movies at the theater are turned up really loud. Like, it was loud. But somehow the sound and my tiredness combined together. And I was just like, I can't be functioning anymore right now. I very much relate to Xie Qingcheng. About 10 minutes later, Chen Man turned to his Xiege as though he wanted to discuss a scene with him. But when he looked over, he saw that Xie Qingcheng had his head down, already deeply asleep. Chen Man quietly closed his mouth. The air conditioning in the theater was quite cold, and he was worried that it'd be too much for Xie Qingcheng when he'd only just recovered from his fever. His Xiege was such a strong person, yet his health had been steadily deteriorating for the past few years. Maybe it was because of his excessive smoking, or the undue stress of his work, but Xie Qingcheng had been coughing a lot recently. His eyesight wasn't as good as before, either. Xie Qingcheng used to have near-perfect vision, but lately, there'd even been a few times where Chenman had seen him putting on glasses while reading or working on his computer. Sighing, Chenman gently removed his jacket and carefully tucked it around Xie Qingcheng's shoulders. Yu watched them with cold eyes. The longer he watched, the more displeased he became, increasingly furious about the encroachment on his territory. But then Chenman, gazing at Xie Qingcheng, couldn't resist doing something else. Something which made Yu's last nerve snap completely. Cautiously, and with utmost care, Chenman reached out and gently touched Xie Qingcheng's hand where it was lying on the theater seat's armrest. Xie Qingcheng's fingertips twitched slightly in response. He seemed to have faintly sensed something, but he was just too exhausted to react. He'd endured so much torment these past few days. He'd seen the freshly unearthed trail of clues about his parents' murder cut off right before his eyes. He was subjected to an insane form of retribution by Yu, just as he began to entertain the notion of treating him as a true confidant. He'd been dealing with the wild storm stirred up by the Qin Siyan incident, which had lain undisturbed for years, like so much silt. He'd had his private information leaked, bright red paint splashed onto the walls of his house, his innocent neighbors implicated by association. The silent eyes of the few friends and family he had gazed at him. Let me start that over. The silent eyes of the few friends and family he had gazed at him from under the cover of night, asking, "Guh, can't you be honest? Even to us?" He couldn't. So there's something he's not telling people. And I don't know if it's more just like, oh, he can't tell people what happened with Yu, or if it's he can't tell people the real reason he said those things about, like, Qin Siyan and the real reason he quit being a doctor. I'm kind of wondering if there's something more about that. The weight of all these things crashing down on him was immense. Out of all the people in the whole wide world, he could confide in none of them. He was a silent secret keeper. In the depths of the great abyss, he'd never cared if light would come. Oof. Perhaps Xie Qingcheng was the only person alive who was strong enough to endure this turmoil, this pressure. He was indifferent and extremely calm. He no longer found it painful, nor did he feel wronged. He didn't even feel lonely. In all this time, he'd never shed a single tear if he could possibly help it. Die-hard male chauvinists like him had very rigid views on gender. He believed that weakness belonged to women, and only the most useless of men. That it couldn't exist in his own heart. He could barely even feel pain. I feel like there's an element here of, like, Yu is, for better or for worse, teaching Xie Qingcheng or going to teach Xie Qingcheng to actually express the pain that he feels, but, like, not through healthy means. However, he was still made of flesh and blood, and if nothing else, he could still get tired. He truly was exhausted. So when Chenman touched his hand, his only reaction was an instinctive twitch of his fingertips. He didn't wake up. Chenman had stopped watching the movie, too. Instead, he gazed at Xie Qingcheng as all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. The segment in The Many Faces of Malady featuring homosexual romance, the one that Yu had acted in, had deeply moved Chenman. I guess Yu's acting wasn't so bad after rehearsing, or did they know? Because they had to take what they had already filmed, right? Like, I don't think there was a reshoot. Whatever. I guess it was the writing was good enough to be moving anyway. He felt that the film had mirrored reality perfectly, that the feelings between people of the same sex truly were extremely difficult to express in words. He liked Xie Ching-chung, but he didn't dare say it aloud. But in this moment, because Xie Ching-chung was fast asleep and because the movie had touched him, Chen Man felt a whisper of temptation. Bowing his head, he stared with rapt attention and bated breath as he covered the other man's hand with his own. Their fingers folded over each other as Chen Man's palm pressed against the back of Xie Ching-chung's hand. This was something that He Yu had only ever done to Xie Ching-chung while in bed. He Yu seemed to merge wholly into the darkness, with only the ghostly pallor of his skin still visible. He was wearing a mask, so no one could see most of his face, but his emotions felt like an overturned bucket of paint. He didn't even want to spare Chen Man a glance. How laughable. What kind of garbage was this? What perversion? How had he missed the fact that this guy was a homosexual back in the cafeteria? How old was this police officer again? 20-something? What? Wasn't it a bit too kinky for him to like someone Xie Ching-chung's age? And they were both men. How disgusting. Sir, you have some things to figure out within yourself. A lot of things. And what about Xie Ching-chung? Wasn't he usually more vigilant than this? Had he died in his sleep? Getting his hand groped and not even realizing it. What useless trash. He Yu's mental state was as distorted as a munch... is it Munch? Was as distorted as a Munch painting. That doesn't seem right. I feel like it should... But I honestly don't know. Yes, he said groped. This is... Henry, it's my... my coffee mug, and it's Wen Kushing. Yes, and it's Munch from the Scream, but I don't know if I'm saying that right, because it just occurred to me. It sounds weird to say it like Munch, but anyway. He stared silently at Xie Ching-chung's sleeping face and the hand Chen Man was holding until he couldn't take it anymore. He watched as Chen Man gazed, transfixed at Xie Ching-chung, and then began to lean over, getting closer and closer to the sleeping man's face, which was cast in a faint blue glow under the light of the screen. "Wake up, you idiot," He Yu shouted in his head. He was overcome by rage. There was no way he could just sit there and watch. He picked up the iced lemon soda he had brought with him from his seat's armrest and upended it over Xie Ching-chung without the slightest hesitation. Chen Man sat up straight at once, freezing in place, his face turning red, then white, then green. But Xie Ching-chung had no idea what had just happened. He had been sound asleep when a full bottle of soda was unceremoniously dumped over his head, chilling him to the bone. Chen Man was a good-natured young man, but he wasn't so good-natured he could take something like this. He turned around and yelled, "What's wrong with you? What are you doing?" Still sitting behind them with his hat pulled down low and his long legs crossed. We drink to long legs in any situation. Chen Man didn't kiss him. He just grabbed his hand, but it kind of sounded like he was, like, getting closer to maybe do that. Okay, what did I... Still sitting behind them, with his hat pulled down low and his long legs crossed, He Yu replied in a neutral yet elegant tone, "My apologies, I lost my grip." He spoke very quietly, and between the noise of the audience and the movie playing in the background, neither Xie Ching-chung nor Chen Man recognized him. Chen Man frowned. "Look at him, he's soaked through." "Forget it, it's fine." Xie Ching-chung was accustomed to keeping his cool. Since the student behind him hadn't done it on purpose, he saw no point in getting angry, but he really was soaked through. Chen Man was sitting next to him, but he was completely fine. Every drop of the student's drink had fallen onto Xie Ching-chung. Xie Qingcheng glanced down at his shirt and autumn jacket, both sopping wet and plastered to his body. He sighed and ducked down to speak with Chen Man. I'll go backstage and ask Xie Xue where I can borrow a dryer. You stay here and watch the movie. With that, he left the theater. Just realized this is the second time... Yeah, the second time that He Yu has dumped liquid on him. Even though the first time was an accident, he still caused it to happen. Now he does it on purpose. He just really likes dumping liquids on this man. He Yu watched Xie Qingcheng's silhouette fade into the darkness before finally disappearing into the emergency exit that was connected to the backstage area. He sat quietly for a moment, then, as calmly as ever, he got up and followed him. Xie Qingcheng borrowed the dressing room backstage. If Huzhou University Theater had been putting on a play, this room would be bustling with people rushing back and forth. But they were showing a movie, so the dressing room was utterly deserted. The first time was that trick with the bucket of water on the drawers in Xie Xue's kitchen. And he set it up to topple over, but he thought it was going to fall on Xie Xue. Xie Xue had been shocked when Xie Qingcheng asked her for the key. Gah, how'd you get so wet? The student sitting behind me accidentally knocked over his drink, he explained. It's not a big deal, but I need to borrow a hairdryer. Oh, okay, there's a bunch of hairdryers. The mounted ones in the changing rooms are the easiest to find. You can go take a look. There were 3 changing cubicles in the dressing room, each with a hairdryer mounted on the wall. Huzhou University had been renovated a couple of years ago, and the president had overzealously installed a motion sensor light in each of the stalls. When Xie Qingcheng pulled open the curtain and walked in, the lamp lit up and illuminated the mirror inside with a brassy yellow glow. He really did look wretched. Not only were his clothes wet, but his hair was soaked too. He drew the red velvet curtain closed and loosened the buttons of his waterlogged shirt. The man in the mirror was very tall. With broad shoulders and a narrow waist, his wet shirt clinging to his slender figure. But he really had become haggard in recent days. With his buttons undone, it was clear that he had lost too much weight. His skin was so pale it was nearly translucent, as if his entire body had been drained of blood. Even the color of his lips seemed washed out. There was a round stool in the changing room, for when people needed to sit or put on shoes, but Xie Qingcheng was a tightly wound man and preferred to stand. He simply stood there and began to blow-dry his short hair and damp shirt. The dryer was so loud that he had no idea someone had walked into the dressing room, until the red velvet curtain was lifted aside and the motion-sensing welcome light turned on once more. Flipping his head around, Xie Qingcheng met He Yu's eyes. Xie Qingcheng, He Yu said softly. He had already taken off his hat and mask, revealing a face as handsome as it was sinister. He was dressed very casually, in a long shirt and jeans. He was even wearing sneakers. Xie Qingcheng looked him over from head to toe, realization dawning. It was you? He Yu smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Crowding into the changing room, he grabbed Xie Qingcheng by the arm and shoved him against the mirror. It was me. It's just a shame that you realized too late. Henry, revealing a face as doomed as it was Yowie. Okay. That's the end of the chapter. The next chapter is just unusually long. So I think what's going to happen is I'm going to start the chapter and then I'm going to find a stopping point and I'll take a break then and then we'll come back and finish it. So, God, and for a chapter to be unusually long, I don't know, I'm scared. I'm scared when Meat Bun has a long chapter. I don't know if that makes sense, but it just feels like things are really going down. So that's on page 69, chapter 64, but he felt very hot. The changing room was narrow and cramped. so squeezing in 2 adult men, both over 180 centimeters tall, made it much too crowded. It felt as though every hot breath they let out would be immediately inhaled by the other man. After the previous round of misery he'd endured, how could Jia Qingcheng possibly be willing to stay in such a small, enclosed area with this pervert? Slapping He Yu's hand aside, he shot him a blistering glare and muttered, "Get out of my way." He Yu released him and lowered his gaze, smiling faintly. "Why did you stop drying yourself? Go ahead. I'll just watch from here." "Step aside." "Why the rush? Look, your hair's still wet." He Yu reached out once more to brush his fingertips against the ends of Xie Qingcheng's dripping hair, only for Xie Qingcheng to shake him off. He Yu ignored him. His lashes didn't even flutter before his fingertips slid down, sweeping over the gaping shirt and landing on the side of Xie Qingcheng's slim waist. An electric, tingling thrill sparked from the pit of his stomach in a ripple of heat as he was engulfed by the outrageous memories of that night. He Yu gazed down at Xie Qingcheng's abdomen, the rims of his eyes flaming red, as his voice dropped an octave. "You're wet here, too." Henry, gaping is a word choice. I'm glad you feel this is relaxing in comparison to Arha. I think I agree, but it's weird because it feels like it shouldn't be. But there's something about the level of absurdity of this story where it stops me from feeling as bad about things. So it does become relaxing in a way, but it's very strange to think about that. Xie Qingcheng was caught utterly off guard by He Yu's touch. He suddenly felt a flicker of fear. But he was a cool-headed man who rarely lost his temper, as he considered it unseemly to throw screaming fits or make an unnecessary fuss. His voice remained low, and merely sharpened like an unsheathed dagger that was about to slice into He Yu's neck. "Step aside." I'll step aside. So you can go find that pig?" Pig. It took Xie Qingcheng a moment to realize that He Yu was talking about Chen Man. Such crudely derogatory language shouldn't come from the mouth of an educated man like He Yu. But he knew He Yu's elegance and refinement were only skin deep. In reality, he was just a beast. Xie Qingcheng narrowed his eyes. "You were staring at us the whole time?" Us. So the two of them were considered an us, huh? He Yu felt another surge of cold rage. He recalled everything he'd seen before. Chen Man draping his coat over Xie Qingcheng at the hospital. Chen Man calling him when something happened. What kind of ordinary guy would care for another man like that? A man who was his elder, no less. It's really funny because other than the hand-holding and the possibly maybe thinking about kissing, I don't know, that Chen Man has done, his actions have all been things that could just be purely platonic. Meanwhile, we have He Yu. Like, come on. Like, get it together. He was blind not to have seen it sooner, to think that he'd actually shared a meal with the guy and enjoyed chatting with him. With this wave of fury trapped in his heart, He Yu began to feel unbearably stuffy. He stared at Xie Qingcheng in silence for a good few seconds. "Xie Qingcheng, you really are an idiot," he said at last, his voice viciously cold. "That pig is just a pervert trying to take advantage of you. Getting so close to him. What exactly do you want him to do to you?" Xie Qingcheng was also furious. Thinking that He Yu was just looking to pick a fight, he lashed back. "What is this bullshit? Don't project your own twisted thoughts onto other people. Don't project. What were you? You were just... I was just thinking that. You were just saying He Yu was definitely projecting. Literally right then, Xie Qingcheng says what we're all saying. The lava in He Yu's heart swelled as he narrowed his eyes, his expression unreadable. "Bullshit? If it weren't for me, he would have kissed you. You had no idea. You were just snoozing away. But I saw everything from behind you." "He Yu, are you insane?" Xie Qingcheng was really pissed off now. "He would have kissed me? How old is he even? There must be some limits to your delusions. You really think everyone is as screwed up as you? It's so, and I'm sorry to keep stopping, but it's so funny to me because their age difference is less than the age difference between him and He Yu. And it's like, I don't know exactly how old Chenmon is because it just said in his 20s. But I'm like, a person in their 20s dating someone or being into someone who's 32. I don't know. To me, I'm like, that's not that crazy. Like, what are you talking about? You really think everyone is as screwed up as you? You like him? Xie Qingcheng gritted out each word from between clenched teeth. Are you aware that the word friends exists in the modern Chinese dictionary? Friends? What kind of a friend would treat you so well? Asking for time off just to come watch a movie with you. Worrying that you'll get cold and taking off his coat to keep you warm. Can't you use your brain? Xie Qingcheng didn't believe him at all, and it made He Yu so angry he felt like smoke was about to come from his ears. He obviously wants you. What the hell are you talking about? Xie Qingcheng snapped, furious. He's nothing like you. He's nothing like me? True. Officer Chen really is nothing like me. He's sunny and warm, clever and obedient. So you like him, don't you? I have nothing to say to you. Sick of dealing with this lunatic, Xie Qingcheng tried to leave. But He Yu blocked his way, so the two of them began to tussle in the cramped space. Yeah, like, the thing is, like, let's be real in real life. If you're into someone and you don't know how they feel about you, you definitely shouldn't try to kiss them while they're sleeping. But Chen Man is such a good guy in comparison to He Yu that it barely even registers with me. I'm just like, come on, he's fine. Like, but yeah, if we didn't know what Chen Man's thoughts were, and other than that one thing, it's like, oh, he's just being friendly. Oh, He Yu. He Yu pinned this man down. The reason he hadn't gotten a good night's sleep in days, grunting at the force of his strikes, but still taking each one head on. He grabbed Xie Qingcheng's face and forced him to look at him. If you don't like him, then stay away from him, he said darkly. I told you he's a creep. Are you insane, He Yu? What business is it of yours who I'm friends with? Who the hell do you think you are? He Yu's face suddenly went blank. But the more expressionless he was, the more terrifying he became. His thoughts were unfathomable. He stared at Xie Qingcheng for a while before suddenly breaking into a smile. The curve of his mouth was chilly, touched by a hint of madness. You must have hit menopause. You're so forgetful. He suddenly brandished his phone at Xie Qingcheng's face, pulling up the photograph that had accompanied him through so many nights of absurdity, and shoving it right before the man's eyes. Way to express to someone that you're not a pervert, that some other guy is a pervert, showing him this picture. Xie Qingcheng couldn't tell what it was at first, but when his eyes finally focused, he realized it was a picture of himself. It only showed the upper half of his body and his sleeping face, but it took him less than a second to recognize when it had been taken. The sight of the hickeys dotted over his collarbone and neck was enough for Xie Qingcheng to recall the intensity of He Yu's actions. The passionate desire on display seemed to leap out of the screen, making his ears redden. It was a photo from that night. A photo taken after he and He Yu had spent the night together. Xie Qingcheng's head seemed to buzz, as a faint ringing filled his ears. A burst of extreme fury swept through his brain. His face blanched, before reddening once more, a flush, spreading from the corners of his eyes to the bases of his ears. He grabbed for the phone, but of course He Yu had been anticipating this. He outmaneuvered him, and pinned him down firmly. What the hell do you want? Xie Qingcheng looked as if he were about to grind his teeth to dust. At first, I only wanted it as a souvenir. He Yu yanked on Xie Qingcheng's soft black hair, forcing him to look at the evidence of his crime on his phone. He stared, dark-eyed, at Xie Qingcheng's face for a long moment before he continued. But now I can see that its real purpose is to cure you of your Alzheimer's. Xie Qingcheng grit his teeth and said nothing. Didn't you forget who I was to you? Asked He Yu. Didn't you forget everything that happened that night? But as soon as you saw this photo, you remembered who it was who made you feel so good that night, after such a long dry spell. It's more effective than any medicine. Xie Qingcheng still didn't reply. Xiege, will you finally acknowledge me now? The youth's words and the image on the phone seared Xie Qingcheng's eyes red with anger. He had endured many things, but this was his first time dealing with someone so base, so monstrous. Even he had no idea what to do. He wanted to turn away, but He Yu wouldn't let him, yanking with pitiless brutality at Xie Qingcheng's hair and forcing him to meet his gaze. In the end, Xie Qingcheng simply closed his eyes, his lashes trembling faintly. He Yu. Moan some more. I like how it sounds. Xie Qingcheng's eyes flew open, his expression extremely dangerous. Are you gay? No, He Yu replied instinctively. No? Then you should stop fucking acting like this. What more do you want? Even if I hurt you and upset you before, we should be even now. Why don't you get lost? Fuck off. As Xie Qingcheng spoke, ashen-faced, he struck He Yu viciously in the chest. He no longer cared whether he hurt himself as he fought to tear himself out of He Yu's grip. He didn't even bother asking for the return of his clothes before he turned around and made to leave. However, just as he touched the velvet curtain of the changing room, a hand shot out from behind him and drew the curtains tightly shut. At that moment, having grown used to their presence, the motion-sensing light went out. Have you ever been in, like, a bathroom where you go in and it's one of those motion-sensing lights and you're sitting there and it turns off and you're just in the stall like, oh, okay, great. Or is it just me? Has that happened to anyone else? I have, like, a childhood memory of this. Anyway. The room plunged into pitch-black darkness, like the Stygian lair of an evil dragon. We're talking about dragons again. Filled only with the sound of He Yu's low, panting breaths. In the dark, his eyes flashed with a wolfish gleam as he moved closer to Xie Qingcheng, his hands slowly sliding down. Click. In the darkness, Xie Qingcheng heard the curtain fastener clicking shut. It was such a soft sound, but it sent goosebumps crawling up his spine. You think I don't want to end this? He Yu narrowed his eyes. At that moment, the only light source was the circle of fairy lights inlaid around the mirror. Their dim, cool-colored glow glanced off the reflection of two people pressed far too close to each other. Xie Qingcheng swallowed instinctively. He was pressed flush against the mirror's icy surface. He Yu, get out of my way. He Yu did not get out of his way. Xie Qingcheng, I'm telling you, I feel so hot. Did you know? I've been burning up all the time recently. It's like I have heat stroke. Perhaps because of the darkness and the atmosphere between them, he dropped his voice as well. It was low and searing, exactly as if he'd lost all sense of reason due to the heat. What about you? Xie Qingcheng was silent. Xie Qingcheng, you don't feel hot at all? As he spoke, he suddenly grabbed Xie Qingcheng's waist to knead and caress it. He shoved him against the changing room mirror, crushing that wiry, half-bared torso between his palms and pressing him against his own upper body. The moment he touched Xie Qingcheng's scalding skin, He Yu couldn't help but groan low in his throat. It was as though his 2 weeks of erotic dreams had all come true, allowing this parched traveler on the brink of death to suddenly drink his fill. He didn't care if it was wrong or inappropriate anymore. At times like these, it was only too ordinary for men to become overwhelmed by lust, at the mercy of their hormones, especially young men. For them, Rationality was nothing more than dust in the wind. In the pitch blackness, He Yu clutched at Xie Qingcheng as if he had gone mad. In that very moment, the possessiveness that Chen Man had incited and the lust that their previous carnal entanglement had kindled burned through all the fuses in his brain. He drew closer, dipping his head and nuzzling against the crook of Xie Qingcheng's neck. "Xie Qingcheng, it's so hot," he murmured. "I want you to cool me down." In the grip of the late autumn chill, how high must his blood have been boiling for him to feel so hot? Amidst their chaotic entanglement, in the darkness of the changing room lit only by the LED lights encircling the mirror, He Yu's hands had already clamped stubbornly onto Xie Qingcheng's waist. With a crisp, metallic click, the belt buckle came undone. Blood drained from Xie Qingcheng's face. In this moment, the nightmare that had wrested him from sleep and left him drenched in cold sweat for the past 2 weeks returned once more with a vengeance. He grabbed He Yu's hand and viciously pinned it down. "Let go." He Yu didn't let go. He only tugged stubbornly on Xie Qingcheng's belt, his eyes and every movement suffused with madness. "Jack me off," he muttered feverishly, again and again, like a threat. "Xie Qingcheng, jack me off. You think I'm running a fucking massage parlor here? Get the fuck out of my sight. Let go of me." "Xie Qingcheng." Xie Qingcheng grabbed He Yu by the wrist, playing an unseen game of tug-of-war with him as he bit out each of his words. "He Yu, I didn't drink any fucking wine today. Do you want to keep your fingers? If you don't, I'll break them one by fucking one. I'll say it one last time. Let go." He Yu stared into his eyes. The two of them were so close they shared each breath, pupil nearly pressed to pupil. The fire in Xie Qingcheng's eyes burned so fiercely that He Yu was almost reduced to ash. He Yu looked at him for a while and smiled. Then the smile slid off his face. He didn't let go. Instead, he dragged Xie Qingcheng to the wall with a blank expression on his face and threw him against it, disregarding the litany of curses the man let out as he pressed the full weight of his body against him. Of course, Xie Qingcheng would never go down without a fight. Eyes practically sparking with anger, he spun around and swung at He Yu. In the cramped changing room, the two of them began to tear into each other like wild animals. A raging conflagration burned in both of their chests, as if there was some deep-seated hatred between them, as if each and every blow landing with full strength. Such violence. For Xie Qingcheng, it was simple. He could finally unleash his long-suppressed wrath in this narrow stretch of no man's land. But He Yu's emotional state was a bit more complicated. He had been deeply affected by that initial encounter, and its aftermath had left him on edge for a long time. He was sure this sort of reaction wasn't right, but he found it impossible to shake the perverse hunger he had developed for Xie Qingcheng since that day. He had no way to relieve it himself, yet he was still addicted, like an undercover narcotics agent who'd been hooked on drugs, hating himself as he sank further into ecstasy. He was the one who'd been avoiding Xie Qingcheng like the plague, but now that he'd gotten a taste, he couldn't stop thinking about tangling with this man with all the hunger of someone desperately starving. As time went on, He Yu's craving grew more and more deadly. Like a boy in the middle of a growth spurt, he could never eat his fill, could never get enough. The corner of his lip was already bleeding from where Xie Qingcheng had hit him in the face, but the metallic taste only seemed sweet to him. With a crimson-streaked grin, he let out a delighted yet twisted laugh as he dragged Xie Qingcheng back by the hair, thwarting his attempts to escape. Enduring blow after blow that was strong enough to break his ribs, he locked the man in place and moved to kiss him. During this fierce yet silent hand-to-hand battle, he felt a sense of joy at finally being able to vent the desires blocking up his heart. He even had a sudden revelation. After he fucked Xie Qingcheng that first time, why did he act like such a hypocrite and block him? He should have thought this through earlier. Then Xie Qingcheng would never have had the chance to contact Chen Man at all, Xie Qingcheng would have no choice but to wear himself out, servicing He Yu every day, getting taken in the office, on the sports field at night, in the classrooms after school let out. As for He Yu, he wouldn't have had to waste so many nights in meaningless conflict with himself. He wouldn't have had to punish himself for so long. Perhaps it was because both men had sustained injuries, but at some point they had stopped fighting. Their scuffle had been fierce. He Yu's lip had been torn bloody, and Xie Qingcheng's wrists were covered in fingerprint bruises. I'll never appear before you again, okay? Xie Qingcheng rasped hoarsely. Now smash that phone to pieces. Stop disgusting the both of us. No, He Yu said, his voice taking on a roguish quality that sounded almost coquettish. I refuse. The older man stared at him. Xie Qingcheng, all people can change. What do you mean? Xie Qingcheng replied, sensing that something was wrong. I mean that I've suddenly realized that we can continue on like this. Xie Qingcheng's eyes widened. He had never seen He Yu's sickness act up in such a terrifying way before. As he spoke, He Yu's gaze was obsessive, yet calm. It was as though he were stating some inevitable fact of life, his voice so indifferent it left no room for argument. Look, I had a failed crush, remember? When someone with a failed crush has nothing else to rely on, it's very easy for them to become suicidal. You might as well look after me by keeping me company in bed. This way, this disease growing inside my heart won't push me to my death. And who knows, maybe I'll be able to help cure your sexual frigidity. It's a pretty good deal, right? You won't be losing out. And I'm still young, too. When you married Li Ruoqiu, you were both getting on in years, weren't you? It'll feel different with me. So why not give me a try? Cure his sexual frigidity. You know, this straight man's sexual frigidity. He pressed forward as he spoke. The searing heat of the young man's body made Xie Qingcheng break out in goosebumps, and the sensation of being forcibly touched made him want to retch. He Yu yanked him around, making him face the mirror. I'll waive the fee if it doesn't work. Xie Qingcheng had never realized that this sort of play existed. He Yu truly was an extraordinary self-taught talent. Why did I just lose my page? No! Sorry, I closed... The book closed. Okay, there we go. He forced the half-naked Xie Qingcheng to look at himself in the mirror. Then, from behind him, He Yu rubbed his hot, firm body against Xie Qingcheng's tailbone, sparking a current of fear straight to Xie Qingcheng's scalp even through his clothes. This terrifying person pressed into him from behind. Even as the theater outside teemed with thousands of students, one of the feature film's actors was here in this pitch-dark, unoccupied changing room, forcing Xie Qingcheng to look at their bodies straining against each other in the preposterous madness reflected in the mirror. You fucking want money, too? He said in a trembling voice. If you're suffering financial difficulties, I can work pro bono. He Yu had the time and leisure to joke around with him now. He held Xie Qingcheng in place by the waist and leaned forward to kiss his earlobe. Then he looked up at the deeply humiliated, incandescently furious man in the mirror and said, But if I'm working pro bono, I'll have to ask for your cooperation. Doctor, let's cure each other, okay? I keep the stuff that he's saying and the way He Yu is being right now, it really makes me want to read his lines in in Brittany's voice for a certain character. And it's definitely not how he talks at all, but I keep wanting to read him like that. With that, he forced Xie Qingcheng's face around, and brooking no refusal, kissed his thin lips. It had been nearly 2 weeks since he last kissed those lips. Since then, he'd avoided them like deadly poison, while reliving the memories time and time again in his dreams. Oh, Henry, no, that's not who I mean. The one with the high voice. He's very conniving. If by some weird reason someone doesn't know of this, vague Arha spoiler, I didn't want to give it away by naming the character, but I don't know. I don't know who's watching who doesn't know. We have to look at, yes, you got it. We have some art that we have to look at. So that's happening right now. I don't know if YouTube will like that, but presumably YouTube should not like basically anything that's happening in these streams right now, and nothing has happened to any of them so far, so I guess we're good. I don't know. Where the heck was I? Since then, he'd avoided them like deadly poison while reliving the memories time and time again in his dreams. The figures of Xie Shui, Liu Jishu, and Chen Man flashed before He Yu's eyes. He felt sincere joy, the joy of smashing each of those images into the ground. It was a joy gleaned from trampling all of them, enacting vengeance against them, hurting them. Xie Qingcheng had bitten through his lip, but He Yu didn't care. It was just blood, right? It was his favorite scent of all. Xie Qingcheng gritted his teeth. You dare. I wouldn't dare. He Yu laughed softly, then kissed Xie Qingcheng again with his fingers clasped around the man's neck. His voice muffled by the kiss, he murmured gently to Xie Qingcheng, even as the other man was on the verge of snapping his neck. How could I possibly dare to do something so untoward? The more he spoke, the more earnest he sounded. No transaction in this world can be forced. If you're unwilling, then of course that's fine too. But you see these photographs, Xie Qingcheng? They're just pictures of your sleeping face. They look pretty normal. But I wonder what Xie Shui would say if I sent them to her. Xie Qingcheng froze. If she happened to ask me how I managed to get a picture of you sleeping, why don't you tell me how I would answer her? You. He Yu kissed Xie Qingcheng's earlobe, which had paled from shock, and chuckled softly. When I'm going mad, I can say anything. I can do anything. You know that better than anyone. Silently, his fingers slid down to rest on that ice-cold metal buckle once more. He felt Xie Qingcheng's waist tense up, and he once again grabbed He Yu's hand to stop him. He Yu's smile faded, his eyes darkening. Xie Qingcheng, he said dispassionately, you'd better think things through. I'm no longer the He Yu you once knew. I find all of you unspeakably disgusting, so I could do anything right now. It's simple. Do you want to seek pleasure with me? Or do you want to bet on whether I'll tell Xie Shui about what we did together? I'll tell her everything. The slenderness of your waist, the number of moles on your shoulders. I'll send her your photos too. You won't have any way to explain yourself to her. So think things through. Having said his piece, He Yu waited, calm and unruffled amid the chaos. He waited and waited, as Xie Qingcheng resisted and trembled. He waited for a long time, a long, long time, but in the end, Xie Qingcheng didn't make any further moves. A cold smile finally spread across He Yu's overcast expression. He knew that he now held Xie Qingcheng's Achilles heel in his hand. Given Xie Qingcheng's particular type of straight man cancer, there were times when he valued his masculine pride over his life. That's just the thing. And it's the tragedy of the situation. And if I think about it too much, it makes it a little too real. But, like, there's no way he can let He Yu tell Xie Shui what happened. Because it's not like he can bring himself to tell her or anyone this was by force. He did not want this. Like, his straight man cancer is indeed too strong. After all, they were the only two people who knew about their private affairs. Once there had been a first time, a second couldn't be ruled out if the conditions were right. If Yu took the risk and used the events of the nightclub as his bargaining chip, Xie Qingcheng wouldn't dare do anything rash in the short term. He knew that this would be Xie Qingcheng's choice. Languishing in the dark would always be preferable to public humiliation, especially being humiliated in front of his sister. So with a smile quirking the corners of his mouth, Yu reached one hand into Xie Qingcheng's gaping shirt and curved it around his waist, while sliding his other hand forward to gently cover Xie Qingcheng's own. I think it's 4:01, so I'm gonna take a break right now, because why not? There wasn't really a good stopping point here that I could find, so I'm gonna just take a break here, and when we come back, we will be on the top of page 83. So, see y'all in a bit. Little mini cliffhanger, I guess. Meat bars, if you will. Yes. That's what we call them. Hello, I have returned. I've returned and I was about to say I'm ready for the chaos, but I don't know if I am ready for the chaos. Also, it occurred to me that, like, as this is happening, Chenmon is gonna be like, hey, where is Xie Ching Chung? And I don't know, I'm concerned. We were at the top of page 83. Prodigal Soup has returned. Thank you. Hi, Nina. Clasping his large hand over Xie Chingchung's fingertips, he manipulated the man's fingers into slowly pulling down the zipper of his slacks. It was just a single action, but reflected in the mirror, it made it seem as if the very air within the changing room had been set aflame. Little by little, the temperature began to rise. With a click, the cold metal buckle on Xie Chingchung's slacks snapped open. The youth gently kissed the older man's nape, then sighed with satisfaction. Reaching up, he stroked over Xie Chingchung's icy features with crooked fingers, inch by inch. Then he closed his eyes and retraced his path with the tip of his nose, like a hound, intimate and adoring, yet with a hidden element of hair-raising coercion. That's more like it, he said gently. My dear Dr. Xie, you have to behave. The dressing room was too small. There was only so much space. When He Yu forcibly yanked Xie Chingchung's slacks down and reached inside, the temperature within seemed to melt the two of them into wet clay, before melding them seamlessly back together. He Yu turned slightly, fondling Xie Chingchung through his underwear, while he lavished sloppy kisses on his ear, taking his earlobe into his mouth and slowly tonguing at it. The lewd, slick sounds made a shiver run up Xie Chingchung's spine. He Yu had never liked men. But drunk on desire like this, his hunger far outweighed his distaste. He did feel some initial revulsion as he palmed the man's cock through the fabric, but at the sight of Xie Chingchung's face flushing with extreme humiliation and embarrassment, that revulsion dissipated like smoke in the wind, evaporated by the heat of lust. But as He Yu curled his hand around Xie Chingchung's cock, he felt somewhat dissatisfied, because he'd jacked off way too many times while thinking of Xie Chingchung in the last few days. What he'd wanted at the start of all this was to see Xie Chingchung fall into a pathetic state. But in the end, in his solitude, he was the one who ended up being the most pathetic of all. I feel like that keeps happening to him. He keeps trying to get this reaction out of Xie Chingchung, but at the end of it, like, he's the one who's reduced to the reaction that he was trying to get from the other. At least he's halfway self-aware, yeah. He Yu felt that he'd been cheated. Xie Chingchung, this divorcee, really was awful. Xie Chingchung was experienced in the bedroom and had been with a woman before. He wasn't inexperienced like He Yu. He wasn't reliving that night with single-minded focus all the time, nor was he constantly thinking about it, constantly wanting it, the way He Yu did. Xie Qingcheng didn't care at all. Of course, he didn't want He Yu in the slightest. This thought made He Yu feel even bleaker inside. He began to kiss and bite Xie Qingcheng's ear with renewed energy and greater force. His hands didn't remain idle either, as they swiftly removed Xie Qingcheng's underwear after some intimate groping. Xie Qingcheng turned away immediately, but He Yu kept him pinned and forced him to face the mirror. "Don't move," he said softly, stroking him. "Look." Xie Qingcheng's breath hitched. The reflection in the mirror was so ridiculously obscene. It completely exceeded his imagination. He Yu stood behind him, stroking Xie Qingcheng's largely unresponsive dick with one hand, while the other gripped his jaw, forcing him to tilt his head back. He Yu stared into the mirror as well, as though he was staring into all those unbearably absurd wet dreams from the past few nights. His canines peeked out slightly as he spoke, the tips of his teeth pressing gently against Xie Qingcheng's neck, again and again. "What do you think?" "He Yu, whatever you want to do, just do it. Stop coming up with new ways to mess around." Xie Qingcheng already knew that resistance was useless, but although his eyes had already reddened with humiliation, he forced himself to stay calm as he spoke. However, like a faint whiff of blood, the subtle tremor in his voice didn't go unnoticed by He Yu. He Yu's hand moved from gripping his jaw to holding onto him from behind. He inhaled deeply against the side of Xie Qingcheng's neck, as if he was smoking some addictive drug. Then, with his eyes half-lidded, he began to stroke Xie Qingcheng's chest lewdly and forcefully as he pulled him further into the circle of his arms. A pair of eyes lifted to glance at the mirror. Those pupils were filled with a near diabolical madness. "You call this messing around?" he asked, throaty and dark. "This is called making love, Professor. You're already 32 and have been married before. Do you really need me to teach you the meaning of this expression?" Humiliated, Xie Qingcheng tried to turn his face away, but He Yu shoved him back, pressing his entire body up against the mirror, and forcing him to observe the lurid scene even more clearly. He Yu's hand kept stroking up and down the man's cock, but how could Xie Qingcheng get any enjoyment out of this? No matter what he did, that delicately beautiful length didn't react at all. It left him even more frustrated. He was already unbearably hard, so hard that the front of his underwear was already slightly damp, but Xie Qingcheng truly had no reaction whatsoever. He Yu's eyes couldn't help but take on a sheen of anger. In the end, he decided to give up on taking care of Xie Qingcheng for now. Did he really expect to cure him? So what if Xie Qingcheng didn't respond? He only needed to get himself off. Thus, somewhat angrily, he flipped Xie Qingcheng around, pressing his back against the ice-cold mirror as he stared into Xie Qingcheng's peach blossom eyes up close. "You really are frigid. When you haven't taken any aphrodisiacs, you can't even get it up." Xie Qingcheng gnashed his teeth hatefully. What kind of normal man would react to another man like this? You're just a fucking nutcase. The word nutcase was taboo to He Yu. As soon as the word left his mouth, He Yu slapped him across the face and then roughly shoved him down. "Get on your knees and unzip me with your teeth." Forcing Xie Qingcheng to make love to him was already the last straw, but if He Yu wanted to sexually humiliate him even further due to a momentary impulse or a flash of anger, he'd better think again. Xie Qingcheng staggered from his shove, but managed to stay on his feet. "In your fucking dreams," he snarled. His eyes flashed with cold blades of light. Staring into them, He Yu conceded that he really was a pervert. Seeing Xie Qingcheng like this only made him even more excited. He hadn't hit him too hard just now. It had just been a reflexive reaction when he was caught off guard by the word nutcase, combined with his innate tendency towards sexual aggression. Now, as He Yu looked into Xie Qingchung's eyes, he couldn't help reaching up to touch where he had just slapped him. Then he replaced his hand with his lips and kissed Xie Qingchung gently on the cheek, again and again. "You're acting up again," he murmured softly between kisses, "even though I just told you to behave." Then he pressed his hands against Xie Qingchung's shoulders, trying to shove the man to his knees. But this had struck Xie Qingchung's limit. Each and every one of Xie Qingchung's lean muscles tensed to the fullest, and He Yu found it impossible to physically force him to lower his head. He Yu sneered, "You really are a tough nut to crack. We're about to do it anyway, so what difference does this make? Didn't I just take care of you?" "Take care of me?" Xie Qingchung's eyes had gone red. All I felt was disgust. He Yu's mouth drifted from his cheek, to lightly cover his lips, brushing against them over and over. Then you can try something even more disgusting." But he did stop trying to force Xie Qingchung to yield and use his mouth. The struggle was too demanding, and would use up too much of his strength. There wasn't much point in wasting his time on it, so He Yu simply grabbed Xie Qingchung's hand and pulled it down. With his large palm tightly enveloping the back of Xie Qingchung's hand, he used Xie Qingchung's fingers to undo his own zipper and remove his underwear. Then he forced Xie Qingchung's stiff hand to touch the terrifying length that sprang from his pants. Here we go, meat bun, with the terrifying length again. His cock was very hot, very large, and painfully swollen, with veins protruding menacingly along its surface, and sticky liquid beginning to collect at the tip. And when he dragged Xie Qingchung's hand down to touch that moist, hot length, Xie Qingchung couldn't help but begin to tremble. His mind was clear and his disposition calm, and he wouldn't make a sound even when he was gripped by terror. But the shaking of his body betrayed the truth. Pleased by his reaction, He Yu kept a commanding grip on Xie Qingchung's hand, allowing him no opportunity to hurt him, and leaned down to seek Xie Qingchung's faintly trembling lips in another lingering, sloppy kiss. He licked and sucked as he deepened the kiss, his breath quickening as soft, wet noises filled the room. Pressing Xie Qingchung amorously against the mirror, he stroked and kissed him for a long while, only releasing him once the mirror had begun to fog up from the hot sweat dripping from their bodies. He Yu was a mentally ill pervert. There was a hint of violent aggression even in his lingering, exploratory kisses. Xie Qingchung was no weakling either, so after their kiss, both of their mouths were a bit raw. Xie Qingchung was even bleeding slightly from the corner of his lip. After a moment of silence, He Yu leaned in again to lick away that speck of blood with the soft tip of his tongue. Then, as if he was trying to steal away all the air in Xie Qingchung's lungs, he pressed another heavy kiss against his lips. Gripping Xie Qingchung's wrist, He Yu forced the other man to stroke him off as he continued to entangle him in an open-mouthed kiss. Then he shifted past Xie Qingchung's ear and trailed his lips down the side of his neck, biting down with his white teeth, as if he wanted to suck his blood. I guess we're very close to this being a vampire story. There are some elements to it, you know. Abruptly, He Yu straightened up, his throat bobbing as he wrenched both of Xie Qingchung's arms up over his head. With Xie Qingchung's hands pinned in place, He Yu pressed closer and stared at him. "You've got a talent for this. You're making me feel so good. Look how hard I am." As he spoke, he leaned into Xie Qingchung and rutted forward, hard and sensual, his wet, searing length pressing against Xie Qingchung's stomach and rubbing back and forth intimately. "Can you feel it?" Grinding his dick against Xie Qingchung's torso, Yu whispered into his ear. Soon, it'll be fucking into you, just as hard as it is right now. Xie Jingchung's eyes were already completely bloodshot, yet he no longer wanted to speak. He had mounted an intense struggle, but it turned out to be utterly futile. He might as well face Yu's shamelessness as coldly as he could. Eyes half closed, Yu nuzzled against Xie Jingchung lightly, then flipped him around so that he was facing the mirror once more. As he stood behind Xie Jingchung, the tips of Yu's fingers played over his pale nipples. Then he kneaded at Xie Jingchung's waist and hips with his large hands, every motion overflowing with sensual implication, as he rubbed the terrifyingly erect length that Xie Jingchung had just stroked against the cleft of his ass, as if biding his time amid that softness. Professor Xie, Yu called out softly, his hot breath brushing over Xie Jingchung's skin. I've always wanted to ask you. His voice was low and throaty, as though carrying an electric current intense enough to make gooseflesh rise. That night, when I fucked you into coming, did it feel good? Did you think about it afterward? Silence. Did you? Still no response. Answer me. It seemed Yu had really touched a nerve. Xie Jingchung abruptly turned to glare at him, hissing through gritted teeth. What I think is that you're absolute trash. You have absolutely no idea what you're doing. How do you have the face to ask me something like that? Sure enough, Yu's expression darkened. As if you can talk. Were you any better when you started out with your ex-wife? You really think everyone is just like you. You. Now that he'd asked the question, though, Yu realized that he didn't actually want to hear Xie Jingchung's answer. He didn't want to hear about how Xie Jingchung had slept with a woman before. It made him extremely uncomfortable. Before Xie Jingchung could say anything else, Yu clamped his teeth down on the vein running along his neck. He licked at it delicately, then trailed kisses from the side of his neck to the back, finally stopping at the red mole at the nape of Xie Jingchung's neck. When he kissed that mole, a faint shiver ran through Xie Jingchung's entire body, as if Yu had bitten down on some soft, vital point. Of course, said Yu, you can say what you want. But I fucked you until you were leaking that night. You were on your hands and knees underneath me, spilling all over the sheets. You've got a good memory, Professor. Surely you didn't forget what happened. I can make you feel so good when I'm inside you. Could Li Ruoqiu do that? Xie Jingchung immediately flew into a rage. The fuck she could. Could you be any more absurd? She's a woman, not some psycho like you. Xie Jingchung continued to curse him out. Naturally, this was well within Yu's expectations. But he didn't care. He didn't care about anything Xie Jingchung said. He was too hungry, too desperate, to once again hear the hoarse sounds he'd fucked out of Xie Jingchung when he caught him off guard that night. So he let him talk, resolving to show Xie Jingchung that no one else, whether they were a man or a woman, could make him feel as good as he could. Xie Jingchung was too stiff and dispassionate. He had no desire to play around, and he wouldn't have known how to, even if he had. The average woman wouldn't be able to get much out of sleeping with a man like this. Most women wanted overwhelming passion from their partner. If they couldn't sense any passion at all, they'd feel very frustrated. But when someone like this was the one being subdued and encroached upon, the initiative fell into the other person's hands. Yu wasn't a woman. He would play around with anything as long as it was exciting. He was the only one who could drag Xie Jingchung down into the gaping chasm of desire. He kissed Xie Jingchung again and again, his lips hot and wet as they trailed over his skin. And as he kissed him, he started to nudge a fingertip into that hidden entrance that had been the object of his mortal fixation these past few days, working his way in bit by bit. He became a bit over-eager once he had his finger pressed inside and thrust into him roughly and carelessly, mimicking the motions of intercourse as he stretched him open. He was a fast learner, with an excellent memory. He could remember all too clearly the things he hadn't done right the last time, as well as the things that had been especially arousing. He would adjust accordingly this time, and put everything to use on Xie Qingchung's body. Though his movements were a bit hurried, he had smeared some hand cream from the dressing room's vanity onto his fingers. Thus, as he worked his way inside, that small opening went from being dry and tight to increasingly slick. I don't know if hand cream is the right thing to use in this situation for, internally, but it's not like anyone is considering Xie Qingchung's health in this moment. The youth thrust into the man again and again until his fingers no longer encountered so much resistance. It's a meat bun novel. We're lucky we get anything. I was halfway expecting her to just make them, work almost to make it work almost like an omega and, self-lubricate. For a second, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if she randomly threw that into this, modern-day story with things like psychological Ebola and the, Yu being able to make people do his bidding. I wouldn't have been shocked at all. I would have been just like, yeah, carry on like normal. By then, Yu couldn't hold back anymore. Extracting his fingers, he pulled his zipper down all the way. With his dick in one hand, he pressed it to Xie Qingchung's entrance, and with the other, he landed a slap on the full curve of his ass. "Relax," he said, his voice growing even huskier. "I'm gonna fuck you now. You don't need to give me a fucking play-by-play." Yu gave his waist another vicious pinch. "You don't need to be in such a hurry to snipe back at me either. Let's see what you have to say when I start fucking you." As he spoke, he palmed roughly at his own cock, achingly hard after being left wanting for so long, then pressed it against Xie Qingchung's puckered hole and slowly pushed in. Yu gasped immediately, his dark pupils taking on a wet sheen. Just getting the very tip inside was enough for his body to immediately recall that night's intense pleasure. He could feel Xie Qingchung's entrance passionately drawing him in, but also resisting him, unable to fight back as it was forced open, clenching and tightening. In an instant, the ecstasy of fucking into that hole came back to him, the feeling that had threatened to drive him mad with obsession every time he remembered it. Yu panted with relish as he clutched Xie Qingchung's waist with his other hand, pinning the man between himself and the mirror. The force of his grip and the overwhelming thrill made the veins in his forearm pop out. Although the tendons in Xie Qingchung's neck were protruding in discomfort, he clenched his jaw, refusing to make a sound, even as sweat beaded on his forehead. Unlike this young student reliving his first time, Xie Qingchung was the one being forcibly fucked, and on top of that, he was a grown man with a great sense of self-respect. Even with just the tip inside, every muscle in his body tensed, as his face flushed with humiliation, a blush staining his frost-pale skin. His hands strained against the mirror, sweat soaking him in a layer of amorous dampness, like water from melting ice. With the opening breached, Yu kept slowly inching further inside. At first, because they were both very tense, he pressed in deeply, yet slowly. The entire process stretched out like a slow motion shot, reflected in the mirror in all of its fiery glory. But in the end, he was still too impatient. As soon as he was halfway in, he lost any sense of consideration. The eager young man couldn't resist any longer. He was about to die of thirst, about to go mad with it. He had gotten off to Xie Qingchung's photos so many times, and the longer it had gone on, the more frantically he lusted after his body. Enough that just rubbing against his blanket would leave him on the verge of coming. Now that Xie Qingchung's hole had taken half of him in, the pleasure of being buried inside him was like a jolt of electricity. How could he possibly wait any longer? With a muted groan and a sudden violent thrust, he shoved his entire length inside. His sudden invasion and the bursts of pain that followed nearly had Xie Qingcheng breathing his last against the mirror. Although he wasn't caught off guard as fully as he had been that first time. Back then, he'd let a yell escape his throat. His whole body still began to tremble. He was now fully seated. He held Xie Qingcheng tightly, his voice a hoarse rasp. Guh, you're covered in sweat and so hot inside. You're squeezing me so tightly, so hot, so wet. Xie Qingcheng refused to let out a single sound. This searing invasion had torn a gash through his calm, his skin flushing crimson. It was like his nightmare, reenacted, dragging him back into that night's filthy quagmire. But to Yu, this was a reenactment of a wet dream. Pushing deep into that warm, tight, wet opening, he expelled a rough breath of delight, his black eyes burning with hot desire. He kissed Xie Qingcheng fiercely, from his neck down to his collarbones, to the sides of his shoulders, onto his trembling shoulder blades, and took a deep whiff. Xie Qingcheng, he said hoarsely, why does your body suddenly smell so good? Remember when you thought he smelled bad, Yu? Xie Qingcheng's voice was even hoarser than Yu's. Smells good, my ass, he whispered, eyes red. Something's wrong with your nose. Now that he was inside Xie Qingcheng, Yu didn't bother arguing. Instead, he kissed Xie Qingcheng again. So good. Parched man finally got his drink of water, feeling pleasure to the extreme, even as his spine trembled from his second taste of this euphoria. Holding Xie Qingcheng, he began to thrust hard and deep. When Yu began to move, Xie Qingcheng truly couldn't take it anymore. Without the influence of the aphrodisiac, the humiliation of being invaded like this was impossible to ignore. Even more terrifyingly, Yu had shown up in the heat of the moment this time, acting entirely on impulse. He wasn't in the habit of carrying condoms, so he had just stuck it in without any protective barrier whatsoever. This fact had occurred to Yu, too, but it only made him even more excited. Like every eager young man getting his first taste, instinct drove him to push into those warm depths again and again, panting heavily as he thrust deep and hard. The temperature in the changing room rose like a burning furnace, as if everything inside was about to melt away. Skin slapped against skin. Yu sometimes quickened his pace, and sometimes went slow. When he slowed down, he kept Xie Qingcheng pinned beneath him, pulling out entirely, before viciously slamming back inside. But when he sped up, he fucked into Xie Qingcheng with rapid, shallow thrusts, a feeling that left him breathless. Without withdrawing completely, he shoved himself deep inside immediately after pulling out the slightest bit, fucking Xie Qingcheng quickly, the pleasure building up maddeningly as it gathered within him. Perhaps it was how long it had been, or perhaps it was because there was no condom in the way, but the sensation of being tightly squeezed by that spasming channel became all the hotter and more thrilling. Yu was all but losing his mind from how good it felt. His thrusts grew sharper and sharper as he fucked Xie Qingcheng faster and faster, driving deeper into him with single-minded ferocity and reducing the man to a quivering mess. One of his hands was still tightly stroking the older man's flat belly, as if trying to see whether he could feel how deep he'd gone, how hard he was pushing through the thin layer of Xie Qingcheng's muscled abdomen. Fuck. Yu felt so good that he didn't even bother to maintain his usual calm, genteel veneer. I think we're far past that at this point. Vulgar words spilled from his mouth, his Adam's apple bobbing erotically as his cock drove continuously into Xie Qingcheng's body. The little bastard's entire face was shrouded with burning desire. Truly insane from lack of release. He thrust so fast and so deep, it seemed as if he wanted to fuck the man beneath him right to death. How could it feel so good? Why did fucking this man feel so good? Yu couldn't have stopped if he wanted to. Xie Qingcheng's hole felt so hot and so tight, wrapping around him, enticing him, sucking him in. It took him in so fully and tightly that he was on the verge of insanity. But Professor Xia's eyes had gone scarlet from the assault. He was pinned to the mirror and thrust into with such feverish hunger, without any chance of escape. The sensation gave him the terrifying feeling that he was going to be fucked to the point of suffocation. In the past, Xie Qingcheng had always been calm and collected when he slept with Li Ruoqiu, so much so that their encounters could even be described as polite. They had never behaved outrageously or wildly. It was as if they were simply performing the duty that a mutually respectful married couple had to fulfill. But now, to his horror, as a man over 30 years old, he was having sex with a university freshman inside a school changing room, while thousands of students watched a movie in the theater before the stage. The boy pushed into him deep and fast, brimming with lust, fervor, and a scalding impetuousness. All of it seeped through his skin and bone, past where the two of them were stickily joined, sinking forcefully into his body. Professor Xie, you really feel so good, so good. As He Yu fucked him, his black eyes stared fixedly at their entwined fingers reflected in the mirror. Their entwined figures reflected in the mirror. With that first frantic craving somewhat sated by Xie Qingcheng's body, he came back to his senses a little. He panted out a breath, suddenly pulling out and gazing at Xie Qingcheng's face, which seemed almost sensual to his eyes. Then, his chest heaving, he grabbed a small stool, the only chair in the changing room, and sat down. Meat Bun was that, Chekhov's stool? The stool is in the room, and she mentioned how Xie Qingcheng did not sit on it, but the stool is just there, and I was like, what's the point of mentioning that it's there? Apparently, this was the point. This time, He Yu faced the mirror himself as he pulled Xie Qingcheng toward him, stroking his own cock. "Ride me," he said, the jut of his throat bobbing. His eyes gleamed with more than just lust. There was obsession in them, a madness that brooked no argument. Xie Qingcheng was only human. His body couldn't handle being fucked so brutally for so long. No matter how strong he was, He Yu had made his torso go limp, to say nothing of the tremor in his legs. Until now, he had been enduring it through sheer willpower. But when He Yu yanked him over, he had no ability left to resist. As He Yu dragged Xie Qingcheng closer to him, Xie Qingcheng caught sight of the terrifying shaft that had just been thrusting crazily inside him. His eyes were already red from humiliation. He immediately looked away. But He Yu grabbed the tie he tossed aside and wound it around Xie Qingcheng's neck, letting it hang down over his gaping shirt and bare chest. Then, with a yank on the tie, he pulled him down. "Sit," he told him again. "Fuck yourself on it." Xie Qingcheng refused, shaking his head, still unwilling to make a sound. The only thing keeping him upright was the hand he had pressed to the mirror. He Yu tipped his head back and said softly, "How am I going to treat your illness if you're so disobedient?" Xie Qingcheng didn't answer. He Yu continued, "It's already like this between us. We won't ever be able to settle the score. But I'd like it for you to feel good, too." Still, Xie Qingcheng shook his head. By this point, even the rims of his eyes had gone red, most likely due to the hurt born of his anger at the intense humiliation his masculinity had suffered. He Yu stared at him for a while before he sighed, cursed softly, and wrapped his arms around Xie Qingcheng's waist. He hadn't actually been counting on Xie Qingcheng taking the initiative himself. He hauled him over and forced his legs to part around his own waist, then readjusted his position. With one hand on his cock and one hand on Xie Qingcheng's waist, he guided him into place, so that his slick entrance was once again swallowed up by his fiercely throbbing length, bit by bit. The process was extremely arousing. As He Yu held Xie Qingcheng, He gazed over his shoulder into the mirror, where he could clearly see the way Xie Qingcheng's trembling body was taking him in and clenching around him in such a humiliating manner. As that wet, slick heat engulfed him once more, he first pressed in firmly with quick grinding motions, then thrust in and out unhurriedly, burying himself further, just like that, rubbing against a terrifyingly deep spot inside Xie Qingcheng's body. Guh, you're taking me in so deep. Yu stroked Xie Qingcheng's back, brushing his fingers over his beautiful shoulder blades. He moved his hips gently, grinding up with small thrusts. Can you feel it? When he again received no reply, he continued. Do you want to see what you look like when you're being fucked down there? Yu was a man of action. He didn't care how Xie Qingcheng replied. This depraved gentleman's question was merely an impulsive gesture of politeness. He moved so that his back was to the mirror, and Xie Qingcheng was facing it. From this angle, Yu's body was blocking Xie Qingcheng's view of the place where their bodies joined together. But he could all too clearly see the way his legs were spread wide open, sitting in a boy's lap, bouncing up and down with each thrust. That was more than humiliating enough. And from this position, Yu could look up and see the face of the man sitting astride him. He could see just how Xie Qingcheng looked as he pressed into him slowly and deeply, shivering as he took it. Just like that, with the older man straddling his lap, he tilted his head back and thrust upward as he held him in his arms. In this position, even if Xie Qingcheng refused to move, gravity did the work for him, and Yu was able to bury himself especially deeply into his body. So deep it felt as though he was about to pierce right through his belly. After fucking into him with those small thrusts for a while, Yu began to get impatient. Once again, his movements grew increasingly ferocious and ruthless. His hips slapped against Xie Qingcheng's ass. Excuse me. His hips slapped against Xie Qingcheng's ass with the sound of flesh striking flesh. For a while, the dressing room was filled with the noise of the two men's heavy panting and their bodies urgently colliding, alongside the filthy, wet sounds of their fucking. Xie Qingcheng had never experienced this kind of stimulation before while sober, and he found it impossible to bear. Shuddering slightly from Yu's violent thrusts, he abruptly raised a hand to brace himself against the mirror. There he was greeted with a close-up view of his own reflection, sitting astride a young man with his long legs forced open, and during each ferocious thrust, as his legs trembled to the rhythm of their movements. We have to drink because long legs were mentioned. By the way, good God, how long is this scene? I'm wondering, is this longer than the first one? I don't remember how long the first one was now, but I think it went through multiple chapters. But this is one very long chapter, so I'm like... Whew. Where? Yu panted deeply, thrusting in as deep and hard as he could, as if he wanted to take all of the desire he had bottled up for the last 2 weeks and concentrate it into this man's body. At that moment, if anyone came into the dressing room, or even if they just passed by the door, they would definitely hear the sounds of their frantic lovemaking, of Yu fucking into Xie Qingcheng. Yu didn't seem to care if they were discovered, though. He had no intention of holding himself back, as his thrusts became increasingly rash and forceful. Henry, as long as Yu's... Yeah. Yikes. Anyone who walked by would see that shoe stool shaking beneath the red curtain of the dressing room and hear the muffled creaking noises of its wooden legs as they scraped against the floor. The two men's legs tangled together over the trousers that had been thrown onto the floor. Xie Qingcheng's toes were curled taut, their paleness tinted with a blush of color, at once unnatural and erotic. The stool shook more and more fiercely, as Yu's motions jerked and rocked Xie Qingcheng's body on his lap with astonishing strength. He slapped Xie Qingchung's ass over and over, squeezing lewdly at its plump fullness. The sounds that came from his throat were the low sighs of a male in the midst of his rut, finally satisfying his desires. So good. Guh, fucking you feels so good. You were made to get fucked, you know? You're so tight. Damn, you're sucking me in too tight. Fuck. Yu almost never used such vulgar language, but when unleashing his bestial desire on Xie Qingchung's body, he showed a side of himself that no one else had ever seen. He was overflowing with scalding desire, coarse, wild, and primal in the extreme. But more mortifying than his words were his deep, searing, intoxicated thrusts. Each one was slick and sticky, filling the cramped changing room with wet noises as the... Okay, that doesn't make sense. Alright, hold on, back up, Meat Bun. I don't know, but I don't think this makes medical sense, but also this world has something called psychological Ebola, so things... When I say that Meat Bun needs to just go ahead and write Omegaverse, we're gonna... But more mortifying than his words were his deep, searing, intoxicated thrusts. Each one was slick and sticky, filling the cramped changing room with wet noises, as the prostate secretions mixing with Xie Qingchung's intestinal fluid made the frenzied, scorching sex grow even wilder. I'm sorry, but what? I can't. Okay. Meat Bun. Alright, where the heck? Xie Qingchung had been fucked for a long time now. So long that his eyes had grown unfocused. So long that he'd thought he'd be trapped here and fucked until he suffocated and died. The air inside the changing room had become so hot and thick that he couldn't even catch his breath anymore. And then, Xiege. Yu suddenly called out his name, very hoarsely, almost passionately. He had heard his name called nearly the exact same way, just as full of anticipation, the first time Li Ruoqiu had slept with him. But Yu wasn't the same. A woman would call out with a softly cajoling tone, as if begging for her partner's tenderness. But this youth's voice held an irrepressible impetuousness, an uncontrollable tide of desire. As if he was in the grip of some intense emotion that had him wanting to devour Xie Qingchung whole. His voice was soft, blazing, and pure. And yet, it wouldn't give Xie Qingchung any chance to take the initiative, much less allow him to escape. That voice seemed to be telling him that he was expected to take everything he was given. Xiege, I'm gonna... Yu panted urgently for a moment, his throat bobbing. Perhaps because it felt too good. So good his soul was about to leave his body. He didn't even finish his sentence. He just started fucking him even more frantically. Skin slapped against skin, and the stool shook violently. Veins popped on Yu's arms as he tightened his grip on Xie Qingchung, his skin flushing redder, and his rapturous panting growing rougher to match. Xie Qingchung really couldn't take any more. He felt like he couldn't get any air. But as Yu fucked him more and more urgently, faster and faster, his breathing ragged and the pulse in his neck throbbing, the expression he wore when he looked at Xie Qingchung changed. As that thing inside him got even harder, more terrifyingly hot, Xie Qingchung could sense it vividly. He could even feel it beginning to pulse as it fucked him. He was a man, too. He knew Yu was about to come. Xie Qingchung had endured until now without crying out a single time. But now, the humiliation was too much. Grabbing Yu's arms, he tried to struggle to his feet. Don't come inside. Pull out, he wailed. There was even a slight tremor in his voice, a surprising note of fear. Not inside, Yu. Not inside. But to Yu, that voice almost sounded pleading. It only served to incite his masculine sense of dominance dominance and brutality even further. How could he possibly be willing to pull out? His response was only savage force. Brooking no argument, the youth pushed the man back down into his lap. Xie Chung had risen slightly to his feet just now, and so forcibly shoving him back down actually plunged Yu even deeper. Xie Chung couldn't help but let out a muffled groan as Yu gasped roughly in pleasure. Then, making use of the momentum, Yu simply picked him up entirely and rose to his feet, pressing Xie Chung against the mirror, with his entire body suspended in mid-air. His only points of support were the place where they were connected and the ice-cold mirror behind him. This new position made Xie Chung's eyes fly open. It was too terrifying. So deep, so hard. Yu didn't pull all the way out at all. He only pulled back a bit before slamming back inside, fast and hard, the slap of his balls against Xie Chung's skin, blending with the wet sounds that had finally begun to emerge after their long coupling. The cock inside him was frighteningly hard and hot, moving in and out like a piston. Listening to Yu's rough panting, knowing full well the student was about to ruthlessly come inside him, Xie Chung reached his limit. Yu, he begged again, his voice quavering. Don't. No, don't come. Pull out. Don't come inside. But even as Xie Chung protested, Yu kept holding on to him, panting with great urgency as he gave it to him deep and fierce, pulse after pulse, twitching as he came thickly inside him, coating his deepest recesses, as if he wanted to fill him up completely and leave a mark that could never be wiped clean. See, it's Omegaverse. He wants to mark him. Oh, yes, Henry, what you need to know about Meat Bun is that the whole Yu's masculine instincts thing is how Yu thinks. Absolutely. Like, the narration is pretty much always infused with whoever's perspective it is. That is absolutely what Yu thinks about this. Xie Chung's hoarse moans propelled Yu to even greater heights. Yu pounded into him like his life depended on it, like he was trying to fuck him to death. He fucked shot after shot of thick fluid into him, fiercely thrusting until the entire wall panel of the changing room was shuddering violently. Xie Chung lost it on the spot. He had been fucked to the point of breaking down. His legs were spread wide apart, forced to wrap around the student's waist, his chest heaving with what could have been the gasps of a dying man. Between the extreme humiliation and the frightening sensations, tears began to drip involuntarily from the corners of his eyes. Yu's bulk pressed down onto Xie Chung as he panted deeply from excitement and stimulation. Gah, you're so good at sucking me in down there. It feels so good. Xie Chung finally couldn't help but lose his senses and scream as he was vigorously filled with the stream of hot cum. Yu had endured so much hunger and thirst, but now, at last, pulse after pulse of his cum shot fiercely and ceaselessly deep into Xie Chung's body. It was so deep and so incredibly thick, the unfamiliar, horrifying feeling of it making Xie Chung's entire body tremble uncontrollably. It was as if his entire person had been shattered to pieces by the reality he was facing in this moment. For all his resolute masculinity, there were tears of humiliation clinging to his eyelashes. His pale lips still kept hazily mumbling, "Don't come inside. Don't come. Don't come." But it was already too late. He had indeed come inside. Speaking of Yu's internal nonsense, because of the male instinct to impregnate a sexual partner, even once he'd finished, Yu kept subconsciously pushing deeper into Xie Chung's body. Just right, Mpreg Omegaverse, Meat Bun. You are so close to it. So close. With his hips pressed between Xie Chung's thighs, he thrust inside and refused to pull out. forcing his still throbbing cock deeper. It twitched again and again as it amorously plunged further in, spurting out the last bit of his cum before He tenderly plugged all of it inside that wet, twitching little hole with his cock. This was the first time He had ever come inside another person's body. Before today, he never would have imagined that it would be with Xie Qingcheng, that it would be a man, that it would be Xie Qingcheng. He'd fucked him until he was so sloppy, pathetic, and miserable. He couldn't do anything but splay his legs and accept his role as the first person in whom He had spent himself. He collected himself from within the throes of intense stimulation, staring calmly at Xie Qingcheng's face. He continued to fuck gently into Xie Qingcheng as he panted, gazing unblinkingly at the man in his arms, who was so drenched in sweat that it seemed like he'd just been dredged out of the water. All of a sudden, he couldn't hold back anymore. As some unfamiliar yet scalding emotion in his heart surged forth, he suddenly dipped his head and kissed Xie Qingcheng's panting, slightly parted mouth. Such a thin, cold pair of lips, yet they felt so soft under his own. He closed his eyes and angled his head as he kissed Xie Qingcheng, refusing to pull out down below, even as he clung wetly to him further up. As He kissed him, he leaned down, one hand slowly placing the delirious and broken-down Xie Qingcheng on that single cushioned stool, as his other hand slid down involuntarily to touch Xie Qingcheng's abdomen. The sensation was seriously too strange. He could feel his own heart trembling. He felt like something was different now. And not just within himself. It seemed that Xie Qingcheng's relationship with him had also changed. This was the first time he'd actually come inside someone else's body. It seemed to mean something completely different from using protection. In all his 19 years, the first time he fucked someone, and the first time he came inside someone, had unexpectedly taken place during these few days and with this man. He kissed Xie Qingcheng for a long time before, at last, he slowly let go. Their lips had separated a little, but there was still a suggestive wetness staining the corners of their mouths. Guh. Stroking Xie Qingcheng's abdomen, He spoke with a dark and complicated expression. I came inside. I came so much. Feels like I'm going to get you pregnant. This outrageously shameless statement made Xie Qingcheng's eyes gradually come into focus. He raised his hand to bring it down in a vicious yet trembling slap. You motherfucking... The blow didn't land. He had grabbed his wrist as if he'd been expecting it. He didn't bother bickering with Xie Qingcheng this time, just allowed him to curse him out as he turned his face, closed his eyes, and pressed a soft kiss to that delicate tattoo. Guh, why don't you sit? I'll help you get dressed. That's the end of the chapter. The very long chapter. Well, we all knew what we were getting into in this book. We've already had some of that. I would actually have to go back in the previous volume and compare how long that scene was to this one. This one felt really long, but the other one I think was split up by multiple chapters, or between two at least, and this was just like one chapter, just marathon, and so I guess that kind of made it feel longer. If the other one might have been longer, okay. No, that makes sense. It's more just the feeling. And also the fact that the whole time I was scared because they're in a dressing room and I was like, Xie Shui could be right nearby. Chen Man could go looking and find them. So I was just kind of like, I'm freaking out. And then I don't know what nonsense about the prostate that Meat Bun was writing, but that just came out of nowhere. As I said, If I hear about a future novel announcement from Meat Bun, it better be Omegaverse. Because otherwise, like, or like something, it can be like more than like it can be like her own fantasy world that she made up. But I'm like, it needs to have those elements because she's practically writing it already. So that was the end of that stream. So next week, when we come back on Monday. Sorry, my nose is like itchy all of a sudden, and I'm like twitching, and it's I can't. Just let me get through the end of the stream. Oh, Henry, it can be Feywolf Hole again too. Yeah, that would work. Just that. Yeah, sure. So when we come back, no, I'm smelling how you use pheromones. Stop. Help. We will be on page 107 for chapter 65, which is called and was very eager to and was very easy to anger. Because the previous chapter title is but he felt very hot, so now it's like and he was very eager to anger. Why do I keep saying eager? Easy to anger. I can't speak anymore. Meat Bun has destroyed my ability to speak and read things. So it's a good thing it's the end of the stream now, so or maybe it's Huyu's fault specifically. I'm gonna blame everything on him now. I'm gonna be like, I can smell Huyu. What is he up to? Anytime something inconveniences me, it's his fault. Or it's Meat Bun's pheromones. Maybe it's just Meat Bun's fault. I don't know. So, yeah, fun times were had today, and I will see y'all on Monday. Bye.